हेलो एवरीवन, दिस इज निकिता's academic boy age. आई होप आपने सारे वीडियोस देख रखे हैं शॉर्ट नोट्स के. दिस इज गोइंग टू बी द लॉन्ग वीडियो. 16 मार्कर जितने क्वेश्चंस हैं यूनिट 1 से रिलेटेड हमारे सिलेबस में, आई एम गोइंग टू डिस्कस ऑल दोज क्वेश्चंस. स्टे ट्यून्ड एंड डोंट फॉरगेट कि आपको स्टार्टिंग से लेकर एंड तक देखना है. अगर आपको ऐसा लगता है कि कोई पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन देखना है तो यू कैन गो टू दिस क्वेश्चन, बट स्टिल आई वुड सजेस्ट कि आप स्टार्टिंग से एंड तक देखें. इट इज गोइंग टू बी इंटरेस्टिंग बिकॉज मैं एग्जैक्टली एग्जाम के फॉर्मेट में आपको बताने वाली हूँ कि आपको एग्जाम में कैसे क्वेश्चंस लिखने हैं. ठीक है, लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड. लेट मी शो यू कौन से क्वेश्चन हम करने वाले हैं पेपर 2 में. ये पेपर 2 है हमारा कंटेम्प्रेरी इंडिया एंड एजुकेशन. ठीक है, सो इस पेपर 2 में हम यूनिट 1 डिस्कस करेंगे. जितने भी 16 मार्कर क्वेश्चन है, पहला हो जाएगा आरटीई एक्ट 2009. इसके कंपोनेंट्स को एक्सप्लेन करेंगे. फिर एजुकेशन का रोल क्या है फॉर द इम्प्रूवमेंट ऑफ मार्जिनलाइजेशन, एंड देन हाईलाइट करेंगे कंडीशन ऑफ एजुकेशन ऑफ मार्जिनलाइज्ड एंड सोशली डिसएडवांटेज सेगमेंट्स. फिर इसको डिस्कस करेंगे हम डिटेल में. And then we will discuss in detail about the article 14, 15, 16, 13 and 51A plus 30 भी करेंगे because exam में 30 है. And concurrent status of education क्या है इसके बारे में हम डिस्कस करने वाले हैं. ठीक है, so let's get started with this marginalization and condition of education of marginalized and socially disadvantaged segments in detail. RTE Act 2009. RTE Act 2009 मैंने ऑलरेडी शॉर्ट नोट्स में भी करा रखा है. नाउ वी विल डू रिलेटेड टू 16 मार्कर क्वेश्चन. ठीक है, मैं आपको डिक्टेट करूंगी. इसमें समझाने लायक ऐसी कोई भी बहुत बड़ी चीज नहीं है. सो यू जस्ट हैव टू लिसन टू इट केयरफुली और आपको इसी तरीके से एग्जाम में लिखना है. The Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009, commonly known as the RTE Act 2009, aims to provide free and compulsory education for all children in age group of 6 to 14 years in India. It enacted on 1st April 2010. This act marks a significant step towards universalizing elementary education (UEE) and eliminating barriers that hindered access to education for a substantial segment of the population. What are the principles of RTE Act 2009? Because it's a 16 marker question, it ensures every child's right to education without discrimination. Universal access provides equitable access to quality education for all children, equity and quality in education. Integrates children from all backgrounds and abilities into mainstream education. Establishes accountability mechanisms for act implementation at various levels. What are the important points? Age group. The act covers children between age of 6 to 14 years. Reservation. Private schools must reserve 25% of seats for children from disadvantaged groups. Curriculum to conform to values enshrined in Constitution and focus on holistic development of the child. Teachers' qualification must have required professional qualification. Special training, special provisions for training children who have never been to school or dropped out. What are the features of RTE Act 2009? So I have written in total 8 small RTE Act features. Free and compulsory education, neighborhood schools, no donation or capitation fee, no screening for admission, teacher-student ratio, infrastructure norms, continuous and comprehensive evaluation (CCE), teacher qualification and training, 8 number. Okay. Next is 5 provisions, SMEs, SMCs. SMCs is school management committees. CCE is continuous and comprehensive evaluation, teachers training, infrastructure development, grievance redressal mechanism. So these are the 5 provisions of RTE Act 2009. What are the features of RTE Act? अब मैंने ऊपर में features बताया था, अब यहाँ पे इसको explain किया है. So features में क्या है? Free and compulsory education, 6 to 14 years age, child till they complete elementary education. Neighborhood schools, proximity होती है. Schools must be located within reasonable distance from child's home to ensure every access. घर के पास हो. Special provisions in areas without schools, जो without schools areas है, government is responsible for setting up schools or providing transportations also. No donation fees or capitation fees. So there should be no donation fees or capitation fees. Admission fees, school cannot charge any fee or donation for admission of 6 to 14 years. Penalty for violation. So schools violating this rule can face penalties. No screening for admission. So equal opportunities during admission. Admission must be done through random selection and student teacher ratio. So class size should be in that way, so the teacher and student ratio to ensure personalized attention. So if there are 100 students in class, so teacher should focus on students, each and every students. Okay, so here ratio is specified as primary schools should have one teacher for every 30 students. So 30 students are there in class, so there should be one teacher for 30 students. So this is teacher-student ratio. Next is infrastructure norms, which is very basic things, because basic facilities, adequate classrooms, separate toilets for boys and girls, safe drinking water and playground, regular inspection to ensure compliance, CCE pattern, continuous and comprehensive evaluation, assessment of child's understanding and progress, holistic development including cognitive, emotional, and physical growth. Next is teacher qualification and training. Qualify teachers with necessary qualifications and professional training. Ongoing training to keep teachers updated with new teaching methodologies. Next is RTE Act flowchart. So very important to make flowcharts. Make one flowchart like this. Write children aged 6 to 14 entitled to get free education. Schools recognized by authority. No discrimination in admission. Admission is based on locality. Teacher qualification set. So teachers should be certified. Monitoring and enforcement. Monitoring and enforcement. Management. Grievance redressal available. Penalties for non-compliance. Support for special needs. Let me read it again for you. Children aged 6 to 14 entitled to free education. Schools recognized by authority. No discrimination in admission. Admission based on locality. Teacher qualification set. Monitoring and enforcement. Grievance redressal available. Penalties for non-compliance. Support for special needs. RTE Act 2009 is a landmark legislation in India aimed at making education accessible, equitable, and of good quality for all children. By focusing on inclusiveness, non-discrimination, and active participation from various stakeholders, the Act strives to create a robust educational foundations for the country's future. Let me show you answer. RTE for free compulsory education, commonly known as RTE Act, aims to provide free and compulsory education for all children in age group of 6 to 14 years in India. Enacted on 1st April 2010, it's a significant step towards universalization of elementary education, eliminating barriers that hindered access to education for a substantial segment of the population. 5 principles: ensure every child right to education without discrimination, universal access, provides equitable access to quality education for all children, equity in education and quality in education, integrates children from all backgrounds and abilities into mainstream education, establishes accountability mechanisms for implementation at various levels. Important points are like age group. So it covers children between age 6 to 14 years. Reservation. Private schools must reserve 25% of seats for children from disadvantaged groups. Curriculum to conform to values enshrined in Constitution and focus on holistic development of the child. Teacher qualification must have the required professional qualifications, special training, special provisions for training children who have never been to school or drop out. Features of RTE Act: free and compulsory education, neighborhood schools, no donation or capitation fee, no screening for admission, teacher-student ratio, infrastructure norms, continuous and comprehensive evaluation, teacher qualification and training. Pre-provision, 5 provisions are there: SMCs, school management committees, continuous and comprehensive evaluation, teacher training, infrastructure development, grievance redressal. Features of RTE Act: free and compulsory education to 6 to 14 years each child till they complete elementary education. Neighborhood schools, proximity schools must be located within reasonable distance from child home to ensure easy access. Special provisions in areas without schools, the government is responsible for setting up schools or providing transportation. No donation fees or capitation fees. Admission fees: schools cannot charge any fees for donation for admission. Penalties for violations: schools violating this rule can face penalties. No screening for admission, equal opportunities during admission. Admission must be done through random selection. Teacher-student ratio, class size, teacher-student ratio to ensure personalized attention. Ratio specified: primary schools should have one teacher for every 30 students. Infrastructure norms: basic facilities, adequate classrooms, separate toilets for boys and girls, safe drinking water, and a playground. Regular inspections to ensure compliance. CCE is assessment of child's understanding and progress. Holistic development of including cognitive, emotional, and physical growth. Teacher qualification training. Qualify teachers with necessary qualifications and professional training. Ongoing training to keep teachers updated with new teaching methodologies. RTE 2009 flowchart. Children aged 6 to 14 years entitled to free education. Schools recognized by authority. No discrimination in admission. Admission based on locality. Teacher qualification set. Monitoring and enforcement. Grievance redressal available. Penalty for non-compliance. Support for special needs. RTE Act 2009 is a landmark legislation in India aimed at making the education accessible, equitable, and a good quality for all children. By focusing on inclusiveness, this non-discrimination, active participation from various stakeholders, the Act strives to create a robust educational foundation for the country's futures. Okay, so this is all about RTE Act 2009. Let's come to the marginalized group. So what are marginalized groups? It's a very interesting topic. If you will write this answer, you will get sure of 16 marks अगर ये exam में आता है तो. So what is marginalized groups? Let me show you. It refers to the community or individual systematically at disadvantage, often facing discrimination, social exclusion, and limited access to resources, power, and opportunities. This group is being separated from the rest of the society. The marginalized groups are, so marginalized groups में कौन-कौन से आते हैं? So what is the definition? It refers to the community or individuals systematically disadvantaged, often facing discrimination, social exclusion, limited access to resources, powers, opportunities. This group is being separated from the rest of the society. The marginalized groups are, I have made two columns for marginalized groups. So these are demographic marginalized groups. So अगर आप ऐसे लिखोगे, तो you will give the idea of demographic population and marginalized groups. The sexual orientation, LGBTQ plus community, gender, women and gender minorities. Disability, person with disability, indigenous, aboriginal, tribal, ancestral communities, race or ethnicity, disparity in race, color, sex, place of birth. In economic, you could write economic marginalization, exclusion, okay, poverty, financial hardship, deprivation, refugee and displaced persons, asylum seeker, exile, immigrants, stateless persons, homeless, non-citizens, internally displaced person by force. So these are some refugees and displaced persons which are included in marginalized community. So demographics are sexual orientation, marginalized groups में कौन-कौन से आ जाएंगे आपके LGBTQ plus community, gender में women and gender minority, disability, person with disability, indigenous, aboriginal, tribal, ancestral communities, race or ethnicity, disparity in race, color, sex, place of birth, economic marginalization, poverty, financial hardship, deprivation, refugees and displaced person, asylum seeker, exile, immigrant, stateless person, homeless, non-citizen, internal displaced person by force. LGBTQ plus community face discrimination in employment, housing, and social service, often lack protection against discriminations. LGBTQ community, you know about transgenders and all, experience higher rates of poverty, So they are very poor and the rate is very high. And homelessness due to societal prejudice. Okay. Women typically earn less than men for equal work, plus fewer leadership positions. So they get very fewer leadership positions, even they get less payment compared to men, disproportionately affected by domestic violence and sexual harassment. Underrepresented in political and corporate decision-making roles, minorities may face legal plus social discrimination. So in women, we have minorities also, which may face legal plus social discrimination, often experience cultural, linguistic barrier. So they face cultural and linguistic barriers in mainstream society. Persons with disability, so those persons who are disabled face physical barriers also that limits access to public spaces and services, struggle with social stigma and norms and stereotypes that hinder or affect full participation in society. Indigenous people suffer from loss of land and cultural erosion and due to colonization and development. Indigenous people suffer from loss of land and cultural erosion due to colonization and development. Even they face health disparities and lower life expectancies, often lack political power, representation in national governments. Race or ethnicity, people of color frequently encounter racial wage gap, racial segregation or racial differentiation, face disparity in employment, education, and healthcare. What about refugees and displaced persons? They flee conflict, persecution, or environmental disasters, leaving them in precarious situations and difficult situations, often lack legal status. Refugees and displaced persons lack legal status because they are displaced from their place and they lose their identity, faces social isolations. They are isolated from society, making integration into new societies challenging. For example, many people come from Bangladesh or Pakistan to India or some other place to take asylum and all those things. So economic marginalization, employment discrimination. In economic marginalization, you have employment discriminations, higher unemployment or lower paying jobs. Education disparities are there, results in skill gaps and economic disadvantage. Financial exclusions are there. Financial exclusion limits their economic opportunities. Okay. Final exclusions limits their economic opportunities. You can say the final exclusions, limits their economic opportunities and economic marginalizations. What else you could write about in marginalization? Role of education for marginalized and socially backward sections of society, which are deprived or weaker sections to empower them. In India, addressing the educational needs of marginalized and socially backward sections is supreme for achieving inclusive development. Inclusive is like holistic development, overall development. So in India, addressing the educational needs of marginalized and socially backward sections is paramount for achieving inclusive development. And even education serves as a key driver for empowerment, breaking the cycle of poverty and fostering social equity. So education serves as a key driver for empowerment, breaking the cycle of poverty and fostering social equity. So you could make one flow chart for role of education by saying that access to quality education, affirmative actions, positive actions, and reservation policies, vocational training programs, girls' education initiatives, scholarship and financial support, inclusive education and policies, community-driven initiatives, public awareness campaigns. So after writing all these points, you could make them in circle by saying access to quality education, affirmative action, reservation policies, third, vocational training programs, fourth, girls' education initiatives, fifth, scholarships and financial support, six, inclusive education policies, community-driven initiatives, seven, public awareness campaigns. So these are some flowcharts of role of educations, ways by which marginalized people can recognize their privileges. So what are the ways by which marginalized people can recognize their privileges? So this is the symbol of marginalized people, okay? So you could talk about that, in which way they can get recognition from the society, or recognition can be given to them. So these are like race, class, language, culture, education, sexuality, ability, age, gender, ethnicity. So these are few important ways by which marginalized people can recognize their privileges. Race, class, language, culture, education, sexuality, ability, age, gender, ethnicity. Next question is, okay, next you can add one example and then you can write about the conclusion. So an example, how will you make? So make this triangle and write and make this person in between, write race, age, basic commodities, and then make this arrow writing inequality, inequity, vulnerability, social dynamics. In inequity, you write race-driven job, educational level, highly densely populated slum area, Okay, so the race-driven job, DRIVEN, race-driven job, educational level, and highly densely populated slum area. Inequality. Okay, no, everyone is not getting the same same equality, same treatment. Number two, for vulnerability, you're vulnerable. So why? Because housing characteristics are there. They're having different housing characteristics because they are marginalized groups. Distance to healthcare services. So they don't get healthcare services on time. Basic public services like drinkable water, garbage management, etc. Social dynamics, public transportation restrictions are there, low availability of basic supplies, social distancing impact on work environment. So social distancing, impact on work environment, low availability of basic supplies, and public transport restrictions for social dynamics. So this is all about marginalization example. What will you write in your conclusion? Marginalization involves the exclusion. Marginalization involves the exclusion of certain groups from mainstream social, economic, and political activities, leading to disadvantages and unequal opportunities. Addressing marginalization issues requires inclusive policies, social justice initiatives, etc. It will solve their problems and would provide them better environment and open all possibilities, opportunities for them. This is all about marginalization topic. Okay, if you want me to show you the answer, if you want to read it, so read this. All right. Refers to community of individuals, systematically disadvantaged, often facing discrimination, social exclusion, limited access to resources, power, and opportunities. Group is being separated from the rest of the society. And marginalized groups are demographic, social, sexual orientation, marginalized groups, LGBTQ plus community, gender, women and gender minorities, disability, person with disability, indigenous, aboriginal, tribal, ancestral communities, race or ethnicity, disparity in race, color, sex, place of birth, economic marginalization, exclusion from society, poverty, financial hardship, deprivation, refugee and displaced persons, asylum seeker, exile, immigrant, stateless person, homeless, non-citizen, internally displaced person by force. LGBTQ plus community face discrimination in employment, housing, and social service, often lack protection against discrimination, experience higher rates of poverty and homeless due to societal prejudice. Women typically earn less than men for equal work plus fewer leadership positions, disproportionately affected by domestic violence and sexual harassment, and underrepresented in political and corporate decision-making roles. Minorities face legal plus social discrimination, often experience cultural linguistic barriers in mainstream society. Persons with disability face physical barriers with limited access to public spaces and services, struggle with social stigma and norms, and stereotypes that hinder or affect full participation in society. Indigenous people suffer from loss of land and cultural erosion due to colonization and development. So they face health disparities and lower life expectancies, and often they lack political power and representation in national government. Race or ethnicity, people of color frequently encounter racial wage gaps, racial segregation, face disparity in employment, education, and healthcare. Refugees and displaced persons flee conflict, persecution, and environmental disasters, leaving them in precarious situations, often lack legal status, face social isolation or exclusion, making integration into new societies challenging. Economic marginalization, employment discrimination, higher unemployment, or lower paying jobs. So in economic marginalization, you have employment discrimination. You you can see higher unemployment rate and low paying jobs. So education disparities result in skill gaps and economic disadvantage. Financial exclusion limits their economic opportunities. Role of education for marginalized and socially backward sections of society, deprived of and weaker sections to empower them. In India, addressing the educational needs of marginalized and socially backward sections of supreme for okay. In India, addressing the educational needs for marginalized and socially backward section is supreme for achieving inclusive development, and education serves as a key driver for empowerment, breaking the cycle of poverty and fostering social equity. So what is the role of education? Access to quality education, affirmative action, reservation policies, vocational training programs, girls education initiatives, scholarships and financial support, inclusive education policies, community-driven initiatives, public awareness campaigns. Okay, so ways by which marginalized people can recognize their privileges: race, class, language, culture, ethnicity, gender, age, ability, sexuality, education. Marginalization, inequity, vulnerability, social dynamics, race, age-based communities. Housing characteristics, vulnerability, distance to healthcare services, basic public services, drinkable water, garbage management, inequity, race-driven jobs, educational level, highly densely populated slum area. In social dynamic, public transportation restrictions, low availability of basic supplies, social distancing, impact on work environment. Marginalization involves the exclusion of certain groups from mainstream social, economic, and political activities, leading to disadvantages and unequal opportunities. Addressing marginalization issues requires inclusive policies, social justice initiatives, etc. It will solve their problem and would provide them better environment and open all possibilities and opportunities for them. This is all about these two questions related to RTE Act 2009 and marginalized group. So this is unit 1, 2 questions. I'm gonna make another 2 questions like concurrent status of education and article 14, 15, 16, 51A and 30. Because this video is going to be very long, so I don't want you to trouble for this. So watch these two questions, and then get ready for the another 2 questions of unit 1. So stay tuned, and please don't forget to comment below whether you like the class or not. We'll come with the next video soon. Bye-bye, take care.